Fernandez be on the move next summer. A shock release clause revealed, which is, you know what, I think a decent fee considering the quality of player that Bruno Fernandez is. Bruno Fernandez talks about the past. He talks about the summer, Saudi, the money, what he rejected, why he stayed at United, and opens up about his future. Because remember, there were reports that Bruno had already agreed to leave Manchester United next summer. Bruno speaks about that. He says, Mount and Maguire injury blow potentially are doubts for the next match. We're going to talk about the team news. Leach is still too early for him to be back ahead of the game tomorrow versus Brighton, which I'm very, very scared for. We're going to talk about Sesko and Sesko sort of on joining United and how he feels. Sorry, Newcastle. And then we'll talk about potentially the fixture list being a joke and fixtures being changed and screwing over Manchester United. So, hello, and welcome back to Alice Talks Football, and welcome back to another live Manchester United news, transfer news, and update show where we're going to discuss all the latest Manchester United news in the next 10 minutes. Let's dive into things. Bruno's contract at Manchester United includes a release clause that would allow him to join a club outside of England for €65 million, provided it's triggered early enough. Do you know what? I could see a Bayern Munich going in for him. That's £56 million. Man, Kane for Bruno swap. I don't know. I think Bruno's still more valuable than Kane, but I can see someone like a Bayern Munich looking at that. You know, maybe even a team in Italy. You look at De Bruyne, you look at all the players from the Premier League go to Italy. Maybe a Juventus try something. I think Bruno, deep down, if he got an opportunity to play for a Champions League club that could challenge for titles in the Bundesliga or in the Serie A, even if it's less money than Saudi, I think he'd go there for 2 years over Saudi. I think Bruno really wants to win something big. I sense that in him. Saudi can afford that easy. They can offer Bruno the most ridiculous wages. I think Bruno's gone next summer. I think when his release clause is that low, it's £56 million, when you look at the quality of player that is there, and I don't think we're fully seeing it this season, but you've got to remember this is a really good player being played out of position. The system doesn't suit him. But versus Liverpool, I thought he was good first half. Versus Liverpool in the second half, I thought he was atrocious. But then that assist was phenomenal. Not many players could come up with that assist. So for me, I think with Bruno, I think he could go. Now, Bruno speaks about his future, and I'm going to get into that in a second. It was reported by The Athletic that Al Hilal increased their contract offer to Bruno Fernandez to €40 million per year net, plus 10 million bonuses. That's €50 million a year. So that's about £40 million a year, which is just ridiculous. That is that is 750k a week potentially, if you're including the bonuses. You're talking about nearly £1 million a week. On the same day, he held a press conference to announce he'd be staying at United, because we knew that Bruno and Saudi were in talks. We knew that he'd gone to Saudi. We know that he had conversations with Saudi. His agent had gone to Saudi, sorry. They offered him nearly £1 million a week if you include the bonuses, to go to Saudi, tax-free as well. And on that same day, he went, no, I'm staying at Man United. Now, I think Ben Jacobs reported something like Bruno's family didn't want the move. And then other sources reported that Amorim has sort of begged Bruno to stay. And then other sources reported that Bruno wanted to stay. I think there was a mixture of things. I think, he clearly was considering Saudi, and I think it probably came down to what Amorim and his family had said to him. But Bruno actually reveals why he didn't accept the move. He said, the manager spoke with me. He said I was still part of the project and he wanted me to stay. The club said the same. I think Bruno would have gone if the club had said to Bruno, it's time to move you on. You don't suit the system. We want to make money for you now. We're in a financial situation. Go. I think Bruno would have gone. I think Bruno stayed because Manchester United and Amorim said to Bruno, we want you to stay. I truly believe it was a situation of Man United and Amorim went to Bruno, we want you to stay. You're important. You're part of our future. Because some reports did say that. Other reports said it's because his family want to go to Saudi. Other reports said he wanted to stay at United. But Bruno said the manager spoke to me. He said I was still part of the project. Bruno said he wanted me to stay. He said the club said the same. He said if the club was like, Bruno, we want to cash in on you. You are 30. We want to make some money. Bruno would be like, okay, I will leave. I'll have to find a solution, but I'll leave. But obviously that wasn't the case, and I was still part of the plan. I could help the club achieve our aims. They made me want to stay. He also said, Bruno, Al Hilal could have offered between 80 to 100 million. From there, I spoke with the manager. He told me we want to recruit other players to help you and to become a better team, so we don't want you to leave. That was said by Bruno. They said, we want you to stay and we want to recruit better players. And I think that happened. And I don't think Bruno would lie about that, but two, Bruno's playing deeper, and we've got quite transitional signings in Sescon and Bumo, and even Cunha can be transitional in a sense. That I think the plan was to have Bruno deeper, playing it into those three. I think that was the plan. I think the plan was to have Baleba next to Bruno, but I think that was the plan, and I think they probably said to Bruno, "We're going to do this, this, and this." But I think it would have been. I think if the first choice was Gyökeres, the second choice was Delap. I think the third choice was Ekitike. I think Sesko was the fourth choice, but Sesko's better than Delap. But I think it was Delap because of the price. I think they said we want to get Cunha and Bumo, one of these strikers. We want to get Baleba, and we want you to be part of this new front five because we think the back line is fine. You know, and do this, this, and this. I think that's sort of probably the situation there. And I think, that convinced Bruno to stay. I think Bruno stayed as well because Man United had convinced Bruno that this season was going to be good and that they were going to have an ambitious summer. And I think, we had a good summer. It hasn't been the best start to the season, but we're going to talk about it in a second. It's been very fine margins. Bruno also said, the offer was very good in terms of salary. Everything was massive for me. I had conversations with Al Hilal. Everyone knows that. There were also other clubs that tried after Al Hilal, but my answer wouldn't change. From Saudi, also from Europe, I had some people talking to me, but we never got into a place where we offering on the table or not. The concrete one was from Saudi. So we had clubs interested in him, but no one gave him a proper offer on the table like Saudi did. I think his agent flew out to Saudi. There was a wage there. There was a big offer. He said, look, I was talking to clubs in the summer. I was having a look around. But ultimately, Man United wanted me to stay. They spoke to me, and I decided to stay at Man United. And I think this is such a deep interview from Bruno because do you know what I like about this? Is I feel like footballers, when they have loads of speculation around them in the summer, they just ignore it and just act like nothing happens, But Bruno's addressed it like, yeah, I was having talks with these clubs. The speculation in the summer was true, but he's addressed it. There's been so many times where a player's been linked to a move, and we've just not really addressed it, or the player hasn't addressed it, And I think that's quite good that it has been addressed and that Bruno has spoken about it so openly and honestly. He said, look, this is true, I did this, but this is why I stayed. And this is exactly what happened. Rather than denying the rumours or going, I always wanted to stay at Man United, I never was thinking of Saudi, he was like, no, I was thinking of it, but I stayed and this is why I stayed. And I love the honesty there from Bruno Fernandez. I love the honesty there and what he's saying. But another thing I want to talk about was obviously that Bruno could have gone. There was actually a report coming out that Bruno had agreed to join Saudi and he was going to leave next summer, which is not true. Now, I knew this probably wasn't true at the time because it came out from IndyCar, but Bruno Fernandez did come out and say, I've seen a lot of news, I've seen a lot of people talking that, and I had an agreement to go already next season. If the club has done that agreement, it wasn't made with me. I haven't spoke with anyone. So this was on IndyCar coming out and saying that Bruno had agreed to leave. There was a deal between Man United and Saudi clubs that Bruno was going to go, blah, blah, blah. So I think it was Al Nassr or Al Hilal, next summer, la, la, la. There was reports that Bruno's move next summer to Saudi had already been done. It had already been agreed. There was reports of that. And Bruno said, yeah, I saw that news. I saw loads of people talking about it. But he said, if the club have agreed for me to go, that's been behind my back. I haven't agreed to anything. And if Bruno doesn't agree to it, he doesn't leave unless his contract was gone. Do you know what I mean? He was just saying, like, yeah, that is news that I could be leaving. Bruno could go next summer. I think Bruno's going to go next summer. But Bruno was just saying, like, nah, nothing has happened that I know of. Anyway, I wanted to talk about a few things. Ruben Amorim has said that Harry Maguire and Mason Mount are both doubts to face Brighton this weekend after suffering knocks and that Martinez is still out. Oh, Mason Mount, man. Maguire's become quite injury prone the last year as well. I mean, it's not the end of the world if those two are out with knocks. I don't want to start them if they're not fit. Put them on the bench, use them if we need them. We've got Euro, we've got Cunha that can play left hand and Sesko that can go up top. So it's not the end of the world. I think we have quite good depth. If Mount's injured, well, Cunha goes to the left, Sesko starts up top, Euro starts in defence, bish, bash, bosh. And then one thing Amorim said, and I really agree with this, and I really like that Amorim said this, was I was told about top four in the press conference after Liverpool, but if Gakpo's shot is 20 centimetres off, the story could have been very different. I want to keep things under control. If you're a manager and you don't win, people will doubt you, sack you, want you sacked. And if you do win, they start talking to him about top four. That's what it's basically saying. We must be clear about the trajectory and not change. There's fine margins in games. If Bruno scores his penalty versus Fulham, we could have 2 more points. We could have 2 more points and be in, I think, 5th. If Bruno scores his penalties, if Cunha doesn't miss this chance, If Baindia didn't make this mistake and this mistake, we could have got a draw versus Arsenal. We could have got a win versus Fulham. Amorim is correct in the sense of, yeah, we could have easily drew to Liverpool, but we could have beaten Fulham easily. We could have drew to Arsenal easily. There's such fine margins that if we're losing because of fine margins, Bruno misses a penalty, the goalie makes a mistake, sack Amorim, sack Amorim, sack Amorim. But if we're winning because of fine margins, and all of a sudden we get a few points, they're like, oh, you could get top four Amorim, or you could get top four Amorim. But Amorim's thinking, but Gakpo hit the post 3 times. And I think it just shows how fine the margins are at this stage in the season, that it's tight. And as long as we can stay within that top 8, I'm quite happy. It's, because I don't want to see us 15th, 16th come January. Do you know what I mean? Thank you for watching. Bye.